In Avatar Fire and Ash, we're introduced to the Mangkwan clan, or they're also called the Ash people, if you don't want to speak Na'vi. They are the absolute worst. They suck. So needless to say, I wanted to make a full comprehensive guide to the Ash people and all the atrocities they've committed. There's going to be spoilers for Avatar Fire and Ash ahead, and there's going to be spoilers for Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, and I have an astigmatism. So we're all going to have to deal with that. The Mangkwan are forest Na'vi, but they have the complete opposite value system as the Omatikaya and the other forest clans that we've seen for the past decade and a half. They are raiders who pillage nearby clans, stealing their resources, ending the lives of a lot of innocent Na'vi, and destroying everything. And I'm assuming they don't recycle. The question that I kept asking myself over and over again was, were the bad forest Na'vi always bad? Like, what were they like before they got Pompeyed? If only there was someone who knew all the information about the Ash people that we could talk to.
What were the Ash people like before the incident? Were they more like the Omatikaya?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. I think they were living harmoniously in their forest, and then one day the rug was pulled out from under them. Probably a lot of them died. Their forest was destroyed. So the forest is deeply rooted. If you're a forest Na'vi, it's a part of your soul. You're a part of the forest is part of you. They don't even have a sense of a boundary between the self and the forest, and the Oma, the spirit world, which is manifested in the forest, right? So it's almost like getting cut in half. You're just out of nowhere. And it's like, wait a minute, I put my faith in Eywa. Eywa will provide. Eywa will guide. Like, where the hell was Eywa? Right. You know? Now, what the Na'vi don't understand is, yes, Eywa is the sentient consciousness around the biological system of the planet. There's nothing she can do about a volcanic eruption or an asteroid impact or anything else. She's not Mother Nature, like that can call down the lightning. Right? She's a biological sentience that sort of balances out life around the world and probably even guides evolution to an extent. But she couldn't do anything to help them. And so they turned their back. You know, they became, I thought, what would it be like to be an apostate Na'vi that no longer believed? Well, now you see all of that Na'vi capability, all that athleticism, and all that intellect is now not a force for good anymore.
According to the world of Avatar visual exploration, even before the natural disaster, the Mangkwan had a history of hostility and were avoided and shunned by most Na'vi. Since the volcanic desolation of their clan, they have chosen to separate themselves further as aerial raiders and pirates. So the clan was always a little bit more hostile than the Omatikaya. The shunning of the clan added to this growing frustration, but when that volcanic eruption happened and Eywa was away from keyboard, that was really the straw that burnt the camel's back. In the words that James Cameron was saying at my face, he revealed that the Mangkwan, especially their leader, had a gross misunderstanding as to who Eywa is and how Eywa works. Which brings us to my favorite section of the entire video. Just kidding, it's not, but I want to keep you engaged. But the section is, how in the heck does Eywa work? Okay, so quickly, Eywa is the All-Mother, or the Great Mother. There's a lot of names for Eywa. She is the deity to the Na'vi. The closest time that we got to seeing Eywa in her true form would be during Jake's dream hunt ceremony, where he was just astral planing, or Grace trying to pass through the Eye of Eywa.
And with her, Drake.
Or that everything that Kitty is. At the end of the day, Eywa doesn't really have a shape. She's electrical signals that are flowing through the root systems of Pandora. Imagine Pandora is just one big brain. Well, the roots are like the neural pathways in that brain. The electrical signals create a global network and a whole entire thing of stored memories. Na'vi naturally have this neural queue, and a Na'vi can connect their neural queue to another Na'vi's neural queue, creating the bond, also called Tsahìk. It's basically,
Don't play with that, you'll go blind.
I think that basically sums up what the neural queue is. But the Na'vi can use their neural queue not just to connect with each other, but to connect with the root system and animals, but mainly the root system. Let's talk about the root system. If you're a Na'vi connected to the root system in the middle of nowhere, or the Tree of Voices, when it was still kicking. Or the Tree of Souls. You can visit the spirits of loved ones who are no longer living, or receive guidance from your ancestors. But if your will is strong enough, you can connect to the network and start manipulating plants, or just multiple animals at once, like a lot of animals. I'm referring to what Kiri did. Eywa is this global consciousness. She is sentient, and her sole mission is to maintain the balance of all life on Pandora. To help with the great balance, the Na'vi maintain a low-impact lifestyle by following the 3 laws of Eywa. And those 3 laws being, you shall not use metals of the ground, you shall not carry burdens upon the turning wheel, and you shall not set stone upon stone. This is basically the 3 laws. I'm just going off of Avatar, the visual exploration, like the most updated version, just in case anyone's curious as to why there's like 50 different renditions of this. In the first Avatar, so in the year 2154, Jake was chosen by Eywa as more of a link between the humans and the Na'vi. Eywa wasn't anti-human, but Eywa definitely wasn't pro-human either. She was just trying to restore harmony to everything. The reason that Eywa intervened in the Battle of the Hallelujah Mountains is because the Na'vi stood no chance against the humans. The humans were creating such a monumental imbalance that Eywa had to step in. She wasn't looking out for the Na'vi clans, she was looking out for everything. All life on the moon. So expecting Eywa to bail you out is a gross misunderstanding of what Eywa is and how she works. Also, you definitely misunderstand Eywa if the roots are like burnt to a crisp and you're trying to communicate with her. Because of course she's not going to get back to you. She's nowhere to be seen. By the way, the volcano is still active. So it's hard for plant life to grow back, and it's definitely hard for that root system to get back to the Mangkwan, making it so to this day, they have no communication with Eywa. Eywa wasn't ignoring you when you were crying out for help, Varang. She couldn't hear you. But nevertheless, Varang insisted on blaming Eywa, and now her clan is a lot like the humans of the RDA.
Well, it's interesting because they have this volcano that blew up their home, and essentially they have no roots, they have no like nature around them. Same with the humans, with Bridgehead City.
Right. That's why they're drawn to each other.
Yeah.
Right? Technology is power. For Varang, power is fear, but it's also power itself. So that's why she's drawn to the weapons system. That's where she and Quaritch meet and come to a kind of an alliance around him arming them and fulfilling her dreams of power. I think that as a little girl, the powerlessness and the loss and that she felt is playing out through PTSD and trying to recapture power and control the things that she couldn't control as a child.
Avatar Fire and Ash, the visual dictionary, says that Varang takes joy in administering pain to other Na'vi she considers weak, which in turn makes her feel strong and no longer the terrified child she was during the dark years when the volcanic fire and ash decimated her people. The word of the day is trauma. When Varang was the little Telu, she casually watched a volcano erupt and destroy everything that she loved and held dear. She was all like, Omatikaya gosh, when witnessing her village burned to a crisp. And for some reason, it really sparked this rejection of Eywa within her.
Why now are we seeing a more bad guy Na'vi clan? What was the inspiration?
Well, I think we're actually seeing that not all Na'vi are virtuous and holier than thou and spiritual, and not all humans are bad, right? So we have Jermaine Clement's character. He takes a stand for the things he believes in, and you totally don't expect him to. He's like the nerdy marine biologist, right? And now he's like this like bona fide hero. We see Spider, who is caught in the middle of all this hatred and mistrust of the sky people, and yet he's biologically, genetically, he's a pink skin. He's the thing that Neytiri hates the most in the world. And yet there's nothing he'd love more than to be part of this family. She's the gatekeeper on that. That ain't happening. You know, she blames him for the death of her son and for the death of her father, just by extension. You know, she's become essentially a racist. So we're testing these characters, and the Ash people show that it's possible for Na'vi, no matter how strong their traditional value system, to be put under so much duress and trauma that they emerge from that as bullies, as conquerors, as, you know, I don't want to use the term evil. I think that's simplistic. I think that they're processing their trauma and their loss through inflicting it on other people.
Yeah.
Right? So it's that old adage, you know, hurt people hurt people.
Right.
And that's what they're doing. They're taking it out on everybody else.
I think it's important to note that the Mangkwan aren't the first not V clan challenging the beliefs of Eywa. I mean, granted, in the past, it was hinted at that the not V went to war with each other. In an activist survival guide, they talk about the Omatikaya, which is another clan on Pandora. You know what? I'm just going to read a section out of the book because I'm too lazy to memorize the script. In the GOAT of the book, An Activist Survival Guide, it goes on to describe not V streamers and how they function as a visual identification of various not V clans, both for ceremonial and practical purposes. Whatever the heck that may be. They're made up of highly decorated animal skins and attached to wooden frames. And they can also be attached to the harnesses of dire horses or mountain banshees. But the real interesting part is down here. Over here. I'm over here. Like the banners and flags that we have on Earth, not V streamers are used for both identification and clan pride. And also as a rallying point during battles. The intricate images that decorate the streamers indicate the clan's name. These images can act as a symbol of inspiration in times of crisis. The images reflect a clan's organizing theme or special point of pride. The Omatikaya, for example, are known for their tremendous love and respect for viper wolves. So basically all their stuff is decked out with viper wolf theme everything. And in this original concept art from Project 880, it goes on to talk about how the clan paints themselves in white war paint. Further talking about the whole battle and the whole war thing, which would imply that they fought each other in the past, but you know, I don't know. People don't really consider an activist survival guide to be canon. I consider a lot of this book to be canon, but if anyone knows Joshua Izzo, just please let him know about my struggles and my frustration with understanding the canon of Avatar. My initial point was that the Mangkwan clan aren't the only clan challenging the beliefs of Eywa. It's the Omatikaya. They're doing the same thing. That Varang is breaking the third law of Eywa, which is neither shall you use metals from the ground. Or something. But the golden boy, Jake Sully, has influenced other members of the Omatikaya to start using human weapons that were made for scale suits. And he's been doing this for some time now. But in their defense, it was more for self-defense reasons, with humans using more aggressive war tactics when expanding out into the frontiers of Pandora. The Not V are having to challenge their initial belief system in order to kind of adapt with the changing times. They forgo a lot of these preconceived ideals just so they can stand a chance against the human technology, which would involve breaking a lot of the laws of Eywa. And when people are like, I think the Not V have plot armor, fair enough, but they're also using human weapons against the humans. Not V have blindly followed this rule. In Fire and Ash, Renault claims that touching any kind of metal poisons the heart, ensuring everyone, hey, don't touch the metals Eywa will provide. A sentiment that Jake becomes incredibly annoyed with by the time of Fire and Ash, as he kind of no longer has faith in Eywa providing, because she was absent while his son died. Even going on to say that he wouldn't take a knife or a prayer into a gunfight again.
Look, I'm a Marine. I'm not taking a knife to a gunfight. Or a prayer.
But maybe it's showing us that Eywa needs to change with the people. Let me explain. I think I'm cooking right here. Let's keep going with this thought till it burns down the town. When I was interviewing the James of the Camerons, I had to ask something.
When it comes to the Ash people, we see that they've kind of deviated from Eywa and deviated from abiding by the Great Balance.
Right.
Are there other Na'vi clans in this world that are also doing the same?
I think anything you could imagine in terms of human psychology will be played out somewhere on Pandora. Pandora is not a world that's as large as Earth, but it's still highly varied and diverse, like Earth is, and there are different biomes, different cultures in different places. I would say the vast majority of them are connected through the Oma to each other and to that value system that we associate with them from movie 1 and movie 2. The outlier, the Mangkwan, would be the outliers. But, Palak, who's the head of the caravan, the convoy, says, the Mangkwan raiders, if they have a term for raiders, it didn't start with the Mangkwan. There must have been other instances throughout history of people that have drifted from the sort of core value system of the Na'vi. So the conceit of this film is that it's really about a set of values that we as the audience, hopefully most members of the audience, agree with, which is, connection to nature, respect for each other, connection with each other, family bonds, all those sorts of things. And it's about people, humans who don't have that value system and humans who do. So Spider and Garvin, the marine biologist, and then Na'vi who have that value system and Na'vi who don't. So we're trying to transcend the color of skin, and we're trying to say that it's all about what you believe to be kind of morally and spiritually correct.
So I'm going to take that as definitely they're not the only raiders on Pandora. The Omatikaya, the ones who live in the rainforest, are so in harmony with their surroundings and just the overall flow of things. Neytiri was freaking out that she had to kill a bunch of viper wolves in order to save Jake.
Don't think.
Because they already have all the resources they need, neither scarce nor abundant, just perfectly in the middle. The Omatikaya waste nothing. The other raiders must be coming from environments where natural resources are diminishing due to natural disasters, famine, or the RDA ruining their land or lives. Varang's home is filled with skeletal remains the same way that Tsahìk's home is filled with skeletal remains. Jake knows that when you ride the beast, all you know is death. Specifically saying that when you ride the beast, more blood, the better. And Varang is rocking the same bringing death energy when she's flying on the Nighwraith. The way that Varang flies the Nighwraith and the way that Jake flies Tsahìk, I don't know, they mirror each other. I feel like this film was exploring Eywa's philosophy a little bit, questioning it and picking it apart. But now we're seeing the Na'vi embrace more of the dark in order to maintain that balance. Like when Tonowari tells Jake, "You're always Tsahìk Makto." I found that line to have a double meaning. I interpreted that as Jake and everyone else has the beast within. It's more of figuring out when and when not to let that beast out. In Fire and Ash, we see two different groups of Pandora natives with polar opposite beliefs. The Tulkun are completely passive, while the Ash people are full-on aggressive, both nowhere near the middle of the spectrum. Varang is the darkest end of the spectrum. Post-volcanic eruption, Na'vi from the Mangkwan abandoned their clan, leaving their family and friends to join other neighboring clans in the forest. The integration process wouldn't have been that hard for them, because they were already forest Na'vi. However, most of the Mangkwan were too prideful to leave their clan and home territory. And because of this, a lot of them irrationally stayed, and thus making life harder on themselves. Varang lost her mother to the volcanic eruption. A lot of anger was just building up within this time. And then by the age of 15, Varang seized control of her clan. She displaced her sister from fulfilling the role of the Tsahìk. And then she poisoned the Olo'iktan, also known as her father. She poisoned him to the point where he couldn't be Olo'iktan anymore because he stopped breathing. Then in no time, the rest of the clan was converted into thinking that Varang is the Messiah, the new great mother. The only thing that Varang kept of her mother's belongings was this dust pouch. And I feel like that kind of sums everything up. Anyway, Varang took control of her clan, forcing everyone to have this perspective of, if you turned your back on us, Eywa, we're going to be turning our backs on you. The Mangkwan quickly converted to the anti-Eywa belief system. But wait, Mangkwan leaders like Varang, this person, right here, this one, gave up Eywa. She is hell-bent on destroying as much of the Na'vi's deity as possible. But how is Varang still the Tsahìk of the clan, aka the spiritual leader? Well, if only there was somebody who could give us some insight.
I got an interesting question for you about that. So in the ultimate Avatar Fire and Ash sticker book, a book that surprisingly is filled with amazing information.
Cool.
It goes on to say that the leader of the Ash people is a sorceress well-versed in spiritual knowledge.
Absolutely.
So even though she has this disconnect with Eywa and nature, how is she still fulfilling the role of the spiritual leader? in her
So
clan.
she would have been brought up as what they would call a tsakarem, which is the tsakarem is the Tsahìk in waiting. So her mother would have been the Tsahìk. So she was brought up into plant medicine and shamanic arts, but she's turned it into a dark art by now using, toxins and poisons and hallucinogens and things like that to control people around her. That stuff wasn't designed for that. It was designed for healing and for good and for spiritual connection. So she's taken it and turned it into a dark art because of her sort of quest for power and control, which once again comes from a place of hurt and feeling powerless during a highly traumatic scenario in her life. And so while I understand her very well as a character and I could write her very novelistically, it doesn't make her any less scary when you're the victim of Varang using those powers of control.
Using the spiritual knowledge of their ancestors, Na'vi and other clans like the Omatikaya would use toxins like venom from arachnoids mixed with hallucinogenic smoke from herbs to help the soon-to-be Na'vi warrior commune with Eywa. It's kind of like the Na'vi vision quest, as it's done to foretell the soon-to-be warrior's destiny and reveal their spirit animal. Varang grew up learning everything she needed to know about these compounds. Now she uses all this knowledge to her advantage in order to gain power over the Na'vi around her. The same Na'vi who lacked the spiritual knowledge of the Tsahìk, which is extra frustrating when you think about it, because each individual Na'vi fulfills their own important role in the clan, and this keeps the entire clan stable and alive, meaning a lot of them didn't have the time to learn important spiritual and medicinal practices that Varang was taught. So she really let her clan down by being the gatekeeper of this ancient knowledge and using it against them. In Fire and Ash, when Quaritch entered Varang's yurt, in the middle of the burnt home tree, she was able to use some of these compounds against him.
The thing I love about that scene is that she gives him essentially a truth drug of some kind. It's hallucinogenic, but he can't lie. He literally can't lie, but he's come there with a truth that will be compelling to her. So he's had that ace up his sleeve the entire scene. You don't know how he is going to get out of this situation. He's doomed, but he's not.
So Varang did some alchemy and created a substance that, when breathed in, acts as the truth drug. In that scene with her and Quaritch, Quaritch is fine telling her the truth because he's genuinely being genuine.
You need me.
He does indeed want Varang to spread her fire, but let's say you're not Quaritch for a second. Let's say you're one of these other Na'vi in the Mangkwan clan. She could give this drug to find out who is loyal to her and who is not. Then she would take the non-loyalists and make them not a part of the clan anymore by killing them. There was a moment in Fire and Ash where Quaritch explains to Varang that people like Sully are traitors. And with absolutely no hesitation, Varang responds saying, then they must die. So to me, that just confirms what she did to the perceived traitors in her clan. On top of that, Varang learned how to become an evil kitty. In the first Avatar movie, so in the year 2154, we witness Eywa controlling the animals using the root systems. She basically does Tsahìk, but with all the animals on a global level, commanding them to attack the sky people. In Avatar The Way of Water, so like the year 2169, we see that the humans and their vehicles can't really exist in the Hallelujah Mountains because Eywa is still having these animals attack them. Then let's look at Kiri, who manipulated plants to attack the humans. She has figured out a way to control the terrifying squid-like creatures to attack humans in Fire and Ash, and that scene was really unhinged. Well, Varang uses the same technique, but she uses it for bad reasons. She uses it on the Na'vi. This is why Varang is rocking the Eye of Eywa inspired tattoo on her palm as she's performing her own manipulation techniques, whether it would be for torture or control. She'll do this when burning more of those herbs and having members of her clan inhale it using a blowpipe made from metals from the ground, further influencing them to follow her cause and ideology and angst. Varang also forms Tsahìk with her enemies, also known as the Bond, sending them into an agonizing state and then severing their neural queue, or kuru, leaving them dead in the eyes of Eywa. And the Na'vi view this as something way worse than death. The Tsahìk connection is abused here, as she uses it to control members of her clan. And it's such a bummer, man, because, you know, for a while we've known that the Na'vi will typically connect their neural cues to each other to create an emotional bond that lasts a lifetime. The intertwining of the cues has been known to be profoundly spiritual and such a beautiful thing. So knowing all that information and then seeing Varang abuse that connection just makes it so much more disturbing. I'm assuming that her most loyal followers also fell victim to the dark Tsahìk practices. Like, look at Riku, for example. Riku is to Varang like what Wainfleet is to Quaritch. According to the Ultimate Avatar Fire and Ash sticker book, also known as the greatest book ever made, Riku is one of the Mangkwan's fiercest fighters and never lets his guard down. He has been a militant supporter of Varang ever since she seized control of the clan. So he blindly supported her after she secured her position, meaning he was like, I'm gonna wait and see what happens, then I'm picking a winning side. Or she used spiritual and psychological manipulation tools to sort of convert him to her way of thinking. This would also explain why so many members of her clan are loyal enough to sacrifice themselves. Remember that moment where one of them just into the Wind Trader's Medusa, even though he didn't have to. It seemed like they had the explosive fire making stuff that they could have just like thrown at the Medusa. I don't think he had to ram his Ikran through there. The Ultimate Avatar Fire and Ash sticker book does not refer to Varang as merciless and other similar adjectives for no reason. In another book talking about Avatar, the Fire and Ash Visual Dictionary, it said that to replenish their numbers, the Mangkwan will raid other clans, not just for food, but for slaves who become indoctrinated into the dark ethos of the Mangkwan. They either wear the ash or they die. Just because there's a blatant, unhinged rejection of Eywa happening with the clan, it doesn't mean they're without culture. They perform ceremonial fire dances and play music on a war drum that's made of animal skin wrapped around 2 Y bows and played with sticks made from bones. Obviously, running in and out of the fire, embracing destruction and death, helping them become the fiercest warriors we've ever seen on Pandora. The Ash people are going to cover themselves in this white-gray ash, giving them the nickname, the Ash People. You're welcome. Altogether, the colors represent smothering ash, blood, and charred wood. You'll notice that, if we can get an image up here, you'll notice that the youth don't really have the war paint yet, or they don't really cover themselves in ash, meaning they must go through like a dream hunt kind of ritual in order to earn it. The Mangkwan embrace uncomfortability, to put it lightly. For example, they don't have sheaths for their blades, so when carrying around the blade, it's just injuring them the entire day. Then they're all just gonna show off how tough they are to each other later on. In addition, the Na'vi of the Mangkwan pierce the skin of each other during the fire dances, or other celebratory things. It's a way to pridefully display how much pain they can endure. The Mangkwan take perverse pride in the tough conditions they live in, believing their severe lifestyle defines their identity and emphasizes their superiority over all other clans. They are convinced that no other clan on Pandora would have the indomitable spirit to survive and thrive in their chosen volcanic wasteland. And don't worry, it gets worse. After allying with a human, they started repurposing metal strips into their chokers or into their loincloths. I guess I was wrong earlier in this video when I made the bold assumption that they don't recycle, because apparently they do. I'll delete my channel. The point is, these articles of clothing are so uncomfortable. They are designed to hurt the Na'vi wearing them at all times of the day. On 2 different occasions in the film Fire and Ash, Varang or somebody else mentions how she wants to take out the heart of her enemies, and upon learning all this information, I could tell real quick that wasn't a metaphor. Varang is the most brutal and effective leader we've seen on Pandora. And if we're talking about war, she's the best strategist. She cultivated a culture where the more suffering a Na'vi goes through, the better they feel. According to the Fire Nash, the visual dictionary, it goes on to talk about the women of the Mangkwan, specifically about their garments, saying strong female Mangkwan apply these tight binds across their breasts to deny the natural Na'vi form intended by Eywa. So there's that. Their weapons are going to be heavier than any other Na'vi clan we've seen so far. They incorporate X-shaped bows and Y-shaped bows. These bows take so much muscle to pull back, but the Mangkwan are really determined to prove themselves, so it's fine. The Y-shaped bows serve two purposes: to generate more velocity on the arrow when they're firing from a mountain banshee, and to, use the Y-shaped part to hold their prisoner by the neck. The handles of the knives are typically made from more practical things like bone or animal horn. The most decorative thing you're gonna see about these weapons is like the red tint that you see on the obsidian blade right here, or the red fletching on these arrows. And that's basically it for anything flashy, as the Mangkwan are prioritizing function over aesthetic. Like, you know what? Look, come this way. Look at the center of Varang's necklace right here. The only thing that stands out here is a singular orange gemstone, because it represents how she's fire or something. The point is, it's straight to the point. A lot of the Mangkwan's knives are going to be made from obsidian, as this kind of obsidian is the kind gathered from the outer slopes of the still active volcano that they're irrationally living next to. Using the obsidian to make a blade with is sort of a rite of passage within the clan. This may sound bad, but I think that Varang's knife is kind of my favorite knife that I've ever seen in the world of Avatar, because it's designed for fighting Na'vi with their knives. She has a blade catcher right here, so she can easily disarm her opponent in blade-to-blade combat. The twin blades we see Varang using during the fire dances or cutting off other Na'vi's neural cues with is also made of obsidian. But like Bugang, obsidian. But obsidian isn't the only material we're using out here. After making an alliance with RDA, the Mangkwan started incorporating RDA scrap metal into their knives and their arrows. Or you know what? Let's get into their weapons for a second. So this is Riku. He lost his right eye during a raid on somebody, I don't know which clan, but they were raiding their village, and then he let his guard down, lost the right eye. Now he's bitter about it, because ever since the eye thing, he always has his guard up, and he just keeps using it to fuel this rampage of revenge. Since Riku is the best warrior in the Mangkwan, and everyone else within the clan is in constant competition with each other, Riku sets the standard. He has a twin blade knife, which is cool, but the main interest here is his big ol' spear. A spear that is specifically designed for piercing through the heart of his enemies, so that way he could watch the life drain out of them. I don't know. To me, that's basically everything you need to know about the Mangkwan weapons. That's their weapons in a nutshell. Oh, and when they're flying in to raid everyone, they carry bags of flammable oil. They combine this with the dry animal hides that they put on their Ikran's head. They lightly light those things on fire, so that way they can use the embers to ignite their arrows. The clothing of the Mangkwan is also made from dry animal hides, which are just as flammable. So when I see them jumping in and out of the fire during the fire dances, I don't know, I'm a little concerned. They fly with this material burning on their Ikrans so they can, efficiently light their arrows. But they also do this to intentionally leave behind that smoke trail so they can look intimidating. The menacing displays to induce fear. The goal is to leave a psychological impact on the Na'vi they're attacking. When you think about it, the Mangkwan are the most battle experienced Na'vi on the entire moon, because the other Na'vi clans that we know, they're not really fighting each other. So no matter what Na'vi you are, if you get attacked by the Mangkwan, you're going to be outskilled in combat. The stories of the Mangkwan were always thought to be exaggerated, but we can clearly see that it's not really exaggerated at all. I mean, they'll rip open these oil bags using a flensing blade made from dark stained bone, then they'll cover themselves in said oil, dive into a Medusa, causing explosions and fire and all that, just so their clan can get like a few materials. I don't know. When it comes to their health, I don't think the clan's thinking long term. Omatikaya, gosh. The more that I look into this, the more that I'm realizing the Mangkwan are the anti-Omatikaya in so many ways. I should know I made a list. First, let's start with the hunting. Remember that moment where Jake was allowed to hunt his first animal? Yeah, well, the Mangkwan, they don't do this. They don't offer the prayers to the dead. They don't return the animal to the forest or Eywa. They don't even give it a quick death. They'll keep the animal alive and suffering all the way back to their village. This is done to prevent the food from going bad, which sucks for the animals because the Mangkwan diet is literally just meat. Like, just look at the lack of vegetation happening here. And they hunt animals in excess. The Mangkwan don't hunt in parties, they all hunt on their own. The only time a Mangkwan warrior is going to share their food with another member in the clan is if that member of the clan also helped them get that food. It's very transactional. The Omatikaya live in the root system of Home Tree, or lived in the root system of Home Tree. And the Metkayina built their homes to kind of intertwine with the mangrove trees, using the root system to support their homes, but putting no real strain on the trees themselves. What do all these things have in common? These clans are in sync with their surroundings and maintain the balance in the ecosystem. Varang, with her "I really dislike Eywa" kind of mindset, has her clan set up in the burnt to just oblivion home tree. A home tree whose remains are only standing 40 feet or 12 meters above the ground. She has her clans create these yurts that do not reflect the harmony and the balance of all things on Pandora. However, I will say this, their yurts are not as makeshift and unbalanced as their weapons or psyches. The yurts are intricately supported by bamboo and other branches, built from a lot of nearby trees that were chopped down because they hate Eywa. The yurts are covered in incredibly durable, weather-resistant animal hides. The design is practical, as they have these skirts at the bottom of each yurt that prevent ash from blowing into their home, even though they're already covered in it. You'll also see up here, there's smoke flaps controlling the airflow because people like Varang are constantly lighting fires in their home. But the Mangkwan ruin all this practicality and ingenuity by hanging bone totems on everywhere. The ash totems, skull totems, they vary in design, but the central theme is monsters. When it comes to these ash totems, for example, they carved out holes so they could fill them with teeth, thus forming demonic faces, and then they continue carving the thing to make horns. Bones are incorporated into everything, like everything. Their drink gourds, of all things, are lined with teeth from Alpha Prolimeris. And to make everything worse, the decorations are not just Na'vi bones or other animals. They also incorporate the severed neural cues. All these skulls in Varang's yurt are from fallen clan leaders and other strong warriors. Her best fighters will present these to her as gifts. These Na'vi skulls outside of Varang's yurt, for example, was given to her by one of her elite guards. But let's go back to the fun architecture. This is bringing me down. Someone in the clan was smart enough to create a hoop out of the proper wood so it can be used for tensioning the yurt. And if we're looking at the front of Varang's yurt, the entrance is made from the jawbone of a fireback mastodon. And within that doorway is a beaded curran. Every time she brings someone into her yurt, the curran is a stark reminder that they have entered her domain and that they should probably fear for their lives. Since any chance of balance is completely thrown out the window here, you'll notice that Varang, playing the part of a little dictator, lives in the biggest, most elaborate yurt in this ash-filled wonderland of a village. When it comes to other clans like the Metkayina, the Tsahìk and the Odoetan would live in the same kind of Maori as everyone else in the clan. Even in the Omatikaya's home tree, the clan leaders and the family members of the clan leaders would sleep in the same kind of woven hammocks as everyone else. Look at them. They're all located in the same area. They all have the same living conditions. There's no like ego or power tripping happening there. In the past, we've witnessed the Omatikaya allow their kids to be interested and curious about new people coming into their territory. The Ash people scold their kids when they come outside of their yurts to see Quaritch and what he's bringing to their depressing village. If you look closely, when Quaritch is entering the village, you can see one of the parents just tugging on their kid's arm going like, get back into the yurt. Really, the aggression in this clan is dialed up to 10. In the Omatikaya, when you complete the rite of passage known as Dream Hunt and become part of the people, you can make your bow from the wood of home tree. It's done as a rite of passage because they really respect this tree as it gives them shelter. So they only take what they need. But the Mangkwan clan create these Y-shaped bows made from trees they cut down solely because they just want to further destroy Eywa. The Mangkwan weapons are made to make you suffer. They're more makeshift and thrown together. There's really no artistry happening here. Well, I guess they're artistic in their own way. It doesn't matter if the blades are made from metals from the ground, bone, or crystal. Their knives are going to have unreasonably jagged edges. The same applies for any of their spears or arrows. And they have swords. So the same thing's going on with the swords. All their weapons are going to be made out of petrified wood, like the kind found in their burnt home tree. Or they're going to be made out of metals from the ground, which is a big no-no from Eywa. Or they're going to be made from bone, which isn't as bad as the other two. Well, depending whose bones they're made out of. Having weapons that are designed to make you suffer is in stark contrast with the Omatikaya's way of hunting, where they don't let the animal suffer at all. They simply thank it for becoming part of the people. Then they return the animal to Eywa with a clean, calculated stab, which is going to cause a quick death with as little pain as possible. Like Sute and friends, the Mangkwan make bolas out of big seed pods so they can wrap it around their targets and make it so that they stop moving. But actually, that's not that bad of a thing. That's actually not really bad at all. I guess I just wanted to throw that in here. I didn't mean to make a pun. I didn't. I said I was done with puns, but for anyone who actually cares, the bolas are made from polished seeds with a slight concave shape to them. The string is going to be made from plant fiber. A lot of clans, even the Omatikaya, have their like young people, the kids, train with bolas way before they start hunting. So at a very young age, they're playing with these things for years. So by the time they're a warrior going on actual hunts, they can fling these things like 10 meters to incapacitate an animal with. I feel like I'm getting sidetracked. Who were we talking about? What was this video about again? Oh wait, pause. We need to go back to the bolas for a second because I just got some new information. Because DK Books totally did not decide to ignore my request about getting an early copy of the new visual dictionary for Avatar Fire and Ash so I could get this video out sooner. And I'm totally not running around with my hair on fire trying to incorporate all this new information I'm receiving so late in the game because I was already working on this video a month ago, and I'm totally not bitter about any of it. In Avatar Fire and Ash, the visual dictionary, it explains that the ropes connecting the heavy resinous seed pods are made out of Na'vi hair, which is disturbing on so many levels. It's kind of impressive that the Ash people had this level of a destructive and reckless way of living even before they got the human weapons. Oh, and there's another thing in the list of wrongdoing. The Mangkwan mistreat the naturally occurring bond between the Na'vi warrior and the Ikran. The warriors completely disrespect their mountain banshees. It's not a friendly relationship between the two of them. The Ash people's Ikrans adopt the same toxic, rigid lifestyle as their riders. For example, their mountain banshees rest on these jagged edges up here on their destroyed home tree. This is where the banshees are supposed to be relaxing, on these broken root columns. Varang, who's the leader of the entire operation, she doesn't ride an Ikran. All the other warriors in her clan ride mountain banshees, but she's the only one who's riding a Nighwraith. It's like her own little ratchet version of Tsahìk. This animal to me is perplexing. It's mysterious. If only we could talk to someone who had a better idea of what the Nighwraith is and sort of the origin and the conception of the creature.
So I'll just get into it, like the backstory of the Nighwraith sort of design. It came about like super late in the production process. Like we were done. We had done all of the heavy lifting on all of the major creatures, like design work. It was like we were starting to. This is my recollection, so might be, the way I remember it, we were starting to hand over shots to Weta VFX. Like we were that far along in the process. So it's a very long process. There's a pre-production process. There's the sort of performance capture process with all the actors. They finish all that, and then they're like handing stuff over to Weta because Weta needs a lot of time to hit the deadline, right? Of like the movie's release. It takes a long time to to make VFX that looks that good. So you have to give them like a lot of runway. We're sort of years into this thing, and then I hear from my boss. My boss is Dylan Cole, and who's the one of the co-production designers who handles all the like organic side of things, all the Navi like stuff and the creatures and stuff. And Ashrita Kamath, who was my supervising art director, and they're like, well, Jim just sort of casually threw out in a meeting that like he wants a brand new creature for Varang to ride. That like a hero, like an A tier sort of creature, right? Like,
right.
Not like a little background thing that you see for a second, like something that is involved and takes a lot of design process and time. Una Chaplin, the actor who plays Varang, my understanding is she had finished all of her motion capture, or at least mostly finished it, including all of the scenes of her riding her creature, right? Because in the script up till that point, for literal years, Varang had been riding an Ikran, like a very badass Ikran that we had done up, and we done a bunch of design work for it. It had all this cool like accoutrement on it, but it was like, that was how it was in the script for most of the time I was on the project. And then, you know, a couple years before release, Jim goes, yeah, she needs a new creature. Having limited conversation with him about it, but just sort of observing his thought process, I think he was starting to feel like he wanted Varang to sort of stand out in the crowd, right? Like when you see her in a wide shot, you want to be able to identify that that's Varang riding her creature.
Yeah.
And she needs to feel that just more embellished and majestic and badass and, you know, than the rest of her clan. So he just felt like she was sort of getting lost. And so he wanted something that was like instantly identifiable, like that's Varang. But we were so late in the process, and like I said, we're turning over shots that Weta is going like, we're giving Weta a heart attack, right? Like they're going like, what now? We're like designing a brand new creature. They're going like, we need this thing like yesterday, or we're not going to finish the movie. Like I said, they need like a lot of time, right, to finish stuff to the quality bar that Jim sort of expects. It was like, okay, Zach, you basically, we need this yesterday and go. And just to give you some context, like, so PyCon was years of design work. I did largely a lot of work on the Skimwing design for Avatar 2, and that was like, give or take, roughly like a little under a year. And then for the Nighwraith, it was like, you have a month to do this thing. Yeah, because Weta is leading, right? Yeah. So like, so it was just like brand new creature that's going to get really close to camera, get all this screen time. You got a month, dude. It's like, just go. So I worked under the guidance of Dylan Cole, our production designer, co-production designer who handles all the organics. You know, Dylan was art directing me, and we just sort of got to work. And I think in that first week or two, I produced like, actually it was probably the first few days, I produced like a few dozen like just black and white silhouette studies of like body shapes of just thumbnail size, like really tiny, like little black and white drawings of like different body plans of what it could be. And we were comparing it against the Ikran, and we were comparing it against the Leonopteryx. And like, here's what we've already done. Here's what it could be, right? The shape for the Nighwraith just sort of emerged from that very first like pass. One of those tiny little silhouettes that I did had this sort of like fan shape repeated, you know, we call them like feathers, finger-like feathers that have the sort of dragonfly motif on them. Even from that first early stage, I think Dylan and Jim were feeling it. Like they were like, oh, that one is feeling like a winner.
It's not really out of character for Varang to be riding something this insane, because she's got stuff like an arm gauntlet that's made from a Thanator hide. A hide made from this. When with the design process, do you ever really think about like, how is this creature, the functionality of certain traits on it, of like, yes, when you're designing those wings, for example?
We definitely do have to think through the lore sort of internal logic of the biology of these creatures. For example, like for her sort of head crest, sort of horn thing, I was looking at a lot of hornbills, which are these types of birds that are native to, I think it's Central and South America and parts of Africa. They use those, I think it's like a casque, and I think it sort of acts as sort of the sound amplifier for when they're like calling one another. I think they're a little bit hollow, I want to say. You check the science on this. Again, this was a quick design. So that was at least sort of the jumping off point for the inspiration. And I always thought they could use, if there were more of these Nighwraiths in the wild, I always thought they could use those horns for sort of like aerial jousting matches between two competing males who are competing over territory or something, right? The wing feather thing, I mean, that was more of that base, that sort of like, what does it need to do for the story and the sort of logic? And that was to separate her and signify that this is Varang's creature. And I don't know if this was intentional or subliminal. I don't know if it was ever explicitly said in one of the meetings with Jim. If not, then it was sort of subliminally done in my subconscious, in the back of my mind. It's sort of a repeated motif from Varang's sort of fan-shaped, headdress, right? So you're sort of instantly identifying her creature as like that is her creature, right? Because it's like this repeated sort of shape that is, on both sets of designs. It's not like literal. It doesn't hit you over the head with it, but it's a sort of subconscious thing. Yeah, does that make sense from a more biological standpoint to have 40 different sort of feather fingers? I don't know if it does, but it looks cool.
When I was messaging you about this, you're like, that's my girl right there. When I was standing next to the Nighwraith, did you create a name for her?
Yeah, so yeah, the crew name for her, after we were finished with this, I was jumping ahead a little bit. After we finished the design, the crew name for her was Ashley.
Ashley.
And I don't know where that came from. That didn't come from me. I'm pretty sure it came out of VFX. It was just like, we didn't know what to refer to her as. So she was just Varang's creature. For a while, it was Varang's Ikran. And then now it's like Varang's new villain creature. I think VFX just started calling her Ashley. Dylan was pitching Freddy 40 Fingers because she literally has, if you count them, she literally has 40 of the little feathers. 10 on each wing, 4 wings. I wasn't doing that on purpose. It's just what felt right. But I think once Jim heard Ashley, he was like, that's it. That's what we're calling her. So the internal crew name, the crew name has been, and will forever be Ashley. But then I think a different department comes up with the sort of official names. It's outside of art department. So I think one of the franchise people, I think it was Ray Perez, who's one of our franchise people, pitched Jim a whole bunch of possible names, and I think Nighwraith came out of that, and that was 6 months before the movie came out. So whereas the design process was a year or two before. So for a long time, she was just Ashley.
You know what? From this moment on, I'm on a mission to make it canon that the Nighwraith's name is Ashley. Like that one moment where Quaritch unintentionally named his Maui Banshee Cupcake.
You make Cupcake.
Even though he would later go on to call other people, like Varang, Cupcake. The point is, I think it's time that we irrationally start a movement to get this Nighwraith named Ashley, the same way that we did with Cupcake. Who's in?
Another thing that Jim, I think, really liked about that shape was that he felt like it looked like a Microraptor, which is like this winged dinosaur. They're these tiny dinosaurs that can sort of, I'm not a paleontologist, but my understanding is they could sort of they're sort of this bridge animal between dinosaurs and birds. They were sort of of the sort of feathered dinosaur era. And so they have these double, wings. A couple more influences in that sort of early phase when I was doing all the silhouette studies, because we were so tight on time, Jim was like, well, let's try something that we know that works. Right. So he's like, we spent a lot of time designing all these body plans for these flying creatures. And so he had me start, at least as a jumping off point, with the Tetrapteron from the first film. So there's a bit of Tetrapteron DNA in the Nighwraith, and also a bit of the Stingbat too.
The Nighwraith looks like a combination of the Stingbat that attacked Jake Sully in the first movie. And the Tetrapteron, which are the flamingos of Avatar. So she's part of the Tetrapteron family tree, which is a really distant branch of that tree. When Ashley goes hunting, she's gonna use these barbels, which are sensory whiskers, to track her prey. Ashley actually hunts stern beasts, and she hunts them like the Omatikaya. Once Ashley's able to separate a stern beast from the herd, she dives in and grabs the thing with her hawk-like claws. Ashley actually uses this cask to pierce through her prey, typically aiming for the exposed operculum. Just like how the Na'vi aim for the operculum with their arrows. She then playfully rips apart the chicken nugget with her razor-sharp teeth. And for those wanting to learn more about the cask, for whatever reasons, it's a bony crust with a hollow core, except the tip. That functions as a resonating chamber to communicate with sounds over long distances. So the animal has more of a brutal background, making it perfect for emo girl over here. These 4 sets of 10 wing veins can fold back if they hit up against rock or trees or any kind of brush, helping Ashley keep a more steady flight. With a split tail, reducing air resistance, and canard flaps like these, the Nighwraith flies at speeds faster than a Maui Banshee. And when it comes to size, it's bigger than a Maui Banshee. Or wait, it's possibly bigger than a Mountain Banshee. I don't know if you know this. I think you may have commented on my animals video about explaining the measurements.
I did.
But
yes.
Do you know how big the Nighwraith is? Could you, like the wingspan alone? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Oh, the scale? I don't know that. I'd have to go check because this is another thing is they scale things. They'll scale the creatures when they're doing the sort of virtual set build stuff or like the performance capture stuff. Like sometimes the Jim will adjust the scale of the creatures after it leaves my desk. So it's like he'll go like, oh, this Tolkien doesn't feel big enough, you know, the matriarch or whatever. Like, so we scale her up or down depending on. And she's a consistent scale, obviously, through the entire film. But like as we're building the thing, as he's designing the film, he's like adjusting the scale. So I don't always know, to be honest. It'll be like I'll have an idea in mind. I think when I was designing her, I was like thinking she was a little bit more Leonopteryx size. Jim wanted her to have her own thing, and so we couldn't do a Leonopteryx. Obviously, there's only one of those. But I was thinking like, oh, we need something that could potentially compete with a Leonopteryx. So in my mind, she was roughly that size. But I think she got scaled down a little bit. And like I said, they had done all of the performance capture with Una already, riding a freaking Banshee. So they build like a buck, right? Like a physical buck for her to ride. And she's doing all her stuff. And I think some of the stunt people do too, of like all those shots with her in it. So we had to sort of reverse engineer, like, okay, this thing has to have the grab points, you know, like where Una is grabbing on the creature and sitting on the creature that was designed for a Banshee. We had to sort of put that into the Nighwraith because it's all done, right? We you know, it's so expensive to like redo it, right? So we had to sort of match what had already been done and sort of, so I think she got scaled down a little bit. The Nighwraith got scaled down a little bit to be a little bit more Ikran size.
So you were kind of locked into those dimensions because it was already recorded.
At least for the part that Una's interacting with, right? The portion of the body that Una's interacting with. Because yeah, it was all, can't redo that. It's too expensive.
Wow. I don't even think about these things. I don't feel like the audience is really thinking about this at all. This is so cool to know about the inner workings.
So much of you would be honestly surprised how much of our job is dealing with scale because you have two sets of scales for everything, right? Like you have human scale, you have Navi scale for everything. And so anytime a character, one of the lead cast is writing a creature, we have built that. Not me, I have not built that. The team has built that. That actual actor is sitting on the facsimile of the creature, and we're using real dimensions, but that actor is probably 6 feet tall, roughly, and a Navi is roughly 9. So everything's got to be scaled up in the virtual world. So you're constantly like battling this like scale thing. But then that Navi character is interacting with a live action human character who is actually 6 feet tall. So all of like Ben Proctor's sets have to be designed for 6 foot tall humans, but we have to put real Navi, roughly 9 foot tall Navi in those sets as well. So everything is like, there's so much of this movie is scale. You would be surprised how much of my job is just like, oh, scale's changing again.
One of the things that I noticed about the Nighwraith was that it had this white pattern on it, which is really like, it's like a natural way to kind of blend in with how the ash people sort of cover themselves in that gray white ash.
We were unsure of, in that early phase, the first 2 weeks of the month that I had to do to design the creature, we were unsure of like, is it going to be her natural pattern that's like sort of the black, white, and red to match the Ash clan, or is it going to be sort of war paint like the Ash clan does to their Ikran? And that was an unanswered question. Jim and Dylan and I didn't know. We were going to discover it. And so we felt that, I don't remember who made the call, but it was probably Jim or Dylan, that it should be her natural pattern to sort of separate her. Like she found this creature, they're sort of, I don't know, it just sort of added to the majesty and the badassery of the creature. That it wasn't something that she had to like paint her colors on. When we had Varang on the Ikran for those many years, as was scripted, her Ikran was painted up in the red, white, and black sort of war paint. But the Nighwraith, we decided to go with the natural pattern.
Since the other people in the Mangkwan clan don't have their own Nighwraith, they will paint their Ikrans the colors of red, black, gray, and white. By the way, the clan colors kind of remind me of Akini who's the Oluwektan of the Tarangi clan, the Ikran-centric clan who lives on the cliffs of the eastern sea of Pandora. She wears this rusty red war paint to rally the rest of the Tarangi clan to battle. So it makes sense as to why they're both wearing red. Anyway, the war paint designs of the Mangkwan's Ikrans vary depending on their purpose. Here's the typical paint design on your typical Mangkwan warrior's mountain banshee. There's no paint up here, because they're going to put armor over it, specifically putting armor with horns and war blades. And here's a different paint design. This one's to mark who the dive bombers are. So people like Varang can easily spot them during battle. So then she can shoot them with a flaming arrow and generate the most disturbing scene that I've ever witnessed in Avatar. When I was talking to James Cameron about why the humans of the RDA suck, he said something interesting.
The humans seem to be like representing more of like the bad of humanity. Like the RDA is kind of just our worst qualities.
It's a distillation of the worst, most venal aspects of human nature, right? Yeah. Well, guess what? That's just the sort of colonial playbook writ large from our own history, from the European colonization and conquest of the Americas and so on, and throughout the world. So I'm just reflecting history back at us.
I don't know if this is the exact inspiration, but if we're looking into the history of 16th century European colonization, as we all do on a normal Tuesday night, the closest comparison to the Sky People Ash People alliance I can think of would be the Hernán Cortés's alliance with the Tlaxcalans. In the year 1519, Hernán Cortés de Monroy y Pizarro Altamirano, first Marquis of the Valley of Oaxaca, or Cortés for short. We could just call him Cortés. Cortés was a Spanish conquistador who was basically responsible for the fall of the Aztec Empire. He went on a conquest for the Spanish colonization of the Americas. Upon arriving at the Yucatan Peninsula, Cortés was able to learn the Xanto Maya language from his prisoners and one priest who acted as a translator. When fighting the Aztecs, Cortés at some point realized that it may be beneficial to ally with some of the natives rather than fight everyone at once. The Tlaxcalans were down to ally with Cortés because they were also enemies of the Aztecs, as the Aztecs kept them oppressed. The Tlaxcalans knew that they couldn't achieve dominance on their own. So at one point, there was 1,000 Tlaxcalans allying with Cortés, meaning he had a good strategic position. And in exchange, Cortés would give them the manpower they needed to take on their enemy. He introduced them to steel, swords, crossbows, horses, cannons, and most importantly, muskets, similar to Quaritch, introducing those weapons to Varang and the rest of the Mangkwan. It seems like Quaritch teaming up with the Mangkwan is really what saved the humans significantly at one point in Fire and Ash, in that one battle over the Spirit Tree. Once the Mangkwan showed up, it seemed like everything was lost. Everyone else pulled the Mekaina and just completely vanished from the final fight. The humans may have this wildly advanced tech, but it seems like the Na'vi and their home field advantage is really just so effective. It's a very deadly combination. Move aside, Spider. Quaritch was the real troublemaker here. In the Avatar The Way of the Waters, the Colonel goes through a similar journey that Jake did in the first movie. Him and Jake both wake up from cryosleep to the side of Pandora. They both cause a very destructive scene when stepping into their avatar bodies for the first time. They both are told to look into a camera and record everything that's going on. And they both go through the Omatikaya Maya. But in Fire and Ash, he continues that journey. But this time, he's the one getting taken in by a new clan and falling in love with the Na'vi, who tells him that he has a strong heart. So when Quaritch said to Jake,
So what, you find yourself some local tail and you just completely forget what team you're playing for?
look who's talking now, Quaritch.
It feels like the deeper we're going in Pandora, the deeper we're going into these characters, because
And into the human psyche as of the audience.
right.
You know, I don't mean it to be a condemnation of our technical, urbanized civilization and culture, but I think one of the themes of the Avatar films is we need to reconnect with nature and remember our connection with nature and honor the wisdom keepers of indigenous thought and practice and spirituality. And we all need to be the indigenous of planet Earth, all 8 billion of us, you know, or that's our path through all this, and charting our path through technology. Varang just sees a path to power, and Quaritch is happy to supply that. And the presumption is that all the people at Bridgehead City are just there to conquer. They're just there to extract, you know.
Yeah.
That Earth is so desperate that they've sent their best, smartest, and probably most conscience-less people to Pandora.
Quaritch getting brought into the Ash People's village is mirroring how Jake was brought into the Omatikaya's village in 2154. It literally is shot the same exact way. Jake goes on the water path, and Quaritch goes on the fire path, one of flow and one of resistance. Like Neytiri, Varang doesn't want to work with the newcomer, but she learns to accept him.
Of course, she tries to control Quaritch. That proves to be, that has a little bit of a blowback effect on her, because what she doesn't expect is that he's just as strong as she is.
Quaritch and Varang view each other as equals, but Quaritch really does adopt more of Varang's way of looking at things. And this is that moment in the video where I think we all just need to stop and take a moment to ask ourselves, is Varang's perspective right? Is Eywa an evil, low-frequency god that needs to be stopped at all costs? I may sound absolutely unhinged right now, but think about it. Na'vi follow these rules without question, like concerningly without question, because in their minds, blindly following these rules keeps them pure in the eye of Eywa. What the defines pure? The meaning can be subjective. Varang claims that fire is the only pure thing in this world, but the Mekaina view water in a very similar way. Both clans see the element as a way to cleanse you of your sins. Come to think about it, when did these laws come to be? There must be a good explanation as to why the Na'vi are following these seemingly arbitrary laws, right? No, when it comes to learning about the history of the Na'vi, it can become frustrating real quick, especially if you're a sky person, like me, or Grace, or Quaritch. The Na'vi don't write anything down. All their records are kept within the root system or described using spoken language. They find it to be incredibly important to pass down the stories and songs of their ancestors to the next generation, but they have no books or documents, just oral language. Now you see why it can be frustrating. But we at least know that the 3 laws of Eywa predate even the time of the first songs, which was a while ago. So somewhere within the root system, there may be an answer, but I haven't met anyone who's found it. So without a clear origin or purpose, the laws inherently become more mysterious and concerning. Look at it this way. The 3 laws gave rise to a hunter-gatherer society, preventing them from growing into vast cities and developing technology like the kind we see on Earth. There isn't abundance or never-ending expansion, as the Na'vi clans are kept in this perpetual state of 300. When one Na'vi dies, another is born. Through the RDA research, xenoanthropologists discovered that since the time of the first songs, the Na'vi societies haven't really changed. Like at all. We're talking barely any change to their bodies from an evolutionary perspective, and no change to their way of life. According to Avatar the Visual Dictionary, the most complete version of this thing, there have been few evolutionary changes or changes in population numbers for at least 12 million years. Meaning if we were to go back 12 million years, the Na'vi would look basically the same way they do in the year 2170. One could say that by maintaining the great balance, Eywa is preventing the Na'vi from further evolving in a traditional sense of the word. Some may call it a perfectly balanced cycle. Others may call it purgatory. Eywa is keeping the Na'vi society constantly looping, which is slightly terrifying. The Na'vi are so integrated into the system of Eywa that each Na'vi individual is born with an innate desire and ability to fulfill a specific role needed for their clan's continued survival. The spiritual energy of the dead influences the natural inclinations of each new child so that the clan is constantly replenished. That really doesn't sit right with me. That kind of takes like free will out of the equation. The Na'vi do their own version of evolution. They call it becoming. They will embrace death, leading to change and growth. Change and growth within both their communities and environment. Eywa teaches everyone that death allows progress, as it creates new life that can adapt to a changing world. Everything is on a path of becoming something else, as Eywa commands. So maybe she's just telling everyone this so they just die and continue the never-ending cycle. Let's say worst case scenario, we have a purgatory situation on our hands. How bad is it really? I've always loved that Pandora kind of seems like a horror movie at first. Look how scared young Jake looks right here. But then once Jake gets taken in by the Omatikaya and starts abiding by these laws and these rules, he finally sees the peace and serenity of the rainforest. There are many clans spread across Pandora, from rainforest to the ocean to icy tundras, because yes, there are apparently snow Na'vi. I didn't know this until recently, but what was it that I need the book. This freaking book confirms that there are Na'vi living in icy tundras on Pandora. So That's each of these clans is shaped by their environment. They all have their own unique culture with stuff like music and fashion, and they seem to be living pretty happily. So at least we got that. But in all seriousness, at the end of the day, Eywa is a creature like any other who adapts and grows with the moon. Kitty is this manifestation of Eywa, or something. Kitty was influenced by Eywa to make sure that Spider could receive the seed that would give him the ability to breathe Pandoran air. Eywa created an immune response to the humans on Pandora.
Our hardware really stirs up the hornet's nest. We only get 10 minutes in enemy airspace. They are all over us.
Spider had to paint himself with blue stripes to exist in the middle of the forest without every animal in the 50-mile radius rushing to attack him.
No, seriously, and the animals respect me more. They don't think of me as human.
And it is still to this day wild to think that the RDA spent billions of dollars on the recon program so that they could have soldiers blend in with the Pandoran rainforest, when really they could have just spent like $10 on paint. I'm getting sidetracked. The point is, Eywa used to look out for all life on Pandora, but then the humans made an oop, and then the immune response was implemented. But Eywa was observant and saw a human adapting to the ways of the Na'vi and abiding by the 3 laws of Eywa, thus changing her mind and giving him the ability to breathe. In the collector's edition of the first Avatar, there's a documentary of James Cameron visiting the Kaiapó in Brazil. At the end of the documentary, he discusses his high hopes for the future, as well as the overall message of Avatar. He believes that we shouldn't just abandon our cities overnight and live like the indigenous communities that we see in Brazil, or any other place in the rainforest, as we wouldn't really know how to do that, because we severed ties with ancient knowledge. Cameron's idea for humanity was that humans have to transform into something different, something that never existed before, a techno-indigenous kind of people, viewing this as kind of the next step in human evolution, where the society would work in unison with its surroundings. Now we're seeing all the characters in Fire and Ash figure out how to navigate the new world in order to achieve that next step in evolution. This is why I was saying that Eywa was needing to change with the people, because she's going to have to adapt with the inhabitants of Pandora, breaking the 3 laws, accepting the inevitable human technology, but still maintaining the balance with all other life. The Na'vi were always representing those indigenous beliefs and ancient wisdom. Now we see the Mangkwan as a way to kind of flip the roles for a second, seeing the darkest end of the spectrum. My favorite example of how like all the Na'vi are deviating from their initial belief system would be how in The Way of Water, it opens with Jake and the Omatikaya raiding the RDA trains for supplies. The same way that Varang and the Mangkwan raid the Wind Traders for supplies. Neytiri hates humans as much as Varang hates Eywa and everyone who follows the Great Mother. They both are focused on destruction, and each holds Spider hostage the same way. Like, look at this. They're both trying to eliminate the character representing that next step in humanity. So in Fire and Ash, Neytiri wears the paint. She embraces the whole breaking the 3 laws of Eywa and gets to witness Varang, someone who's kind of like a future version of herself going on a warpath of reckless violence, spiraling downward to the point where it just gets really disturbing. Neytiri may be pro-Eywa, but she was walking a similar path as Varang. Neytiri needed to enter the Mangkwan belief system to explore the darkest end of the scale and come to the conclusion that the Na'vi and the humans need to find another way. Quaritch wears the paint as well and comes to a similar conclusion, but does it by eliminating himself to restore that balance. One is purifying themselves with the water and the other with fire. So technically the Mangkwan play the biggest role in showing everyone that the humans are worth saving and forwarding that next step in evolution. So at least there's that.
I'm really happy with how she turned out, and I'm happy even more with how she's being received by the fans. From hardcore fans and even like just more sort of casual like moviegoer types that are not like, I'm a hardcore Avatar fan, like saying like, oh, this is one of my favorite creatures, my favorite thing since the Tsahìk. And I'm like, that is such, you don't know how much that means to me, like how how fulfilling that is to hear.
Oh, this is definitely something. Where can people follow your artwork?
I'm pretty active on Instagram and Blue Sky mostly, and I'll just send you my handles.
I'll display
and you
it. Yeah.
Yeah, put them up. It sounds silly, but if the movie resonated with you, if the creatures resonated with you, if you can give me a follow, it does help us as like artists. Like when we have, followings, it helps with our sort of job prospects. I do want to say thank you so much to you and to the rest of the Avatar fan base. You all really make this all worth it. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, I'm sort of at a loss for words, but like toil away for so long, and you're going like, is this thing ever going to come out? And when it does, is anyone going to care? And so when it does finally come out and we hear from you and we hear that you are receiving it well, it really does mean a lot to us. And I'm not just saying that, like, it's, as an artist, it is so fulfilling to hear that my work resonates with people.
Well, thank you for your time.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's all we had time for?
I want to stay here and ask
we
you
were
about
just
the
getting warmed
Medusa.
up.
Yeah.